Okay, teammates, we are back once again. If this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the number one show on innovative teamwork. Great to have you. Looking forward to having you back for more. To my regular listeners, you guys already know what happens when you hit the play button here, whether it's myself as a guest or whether it's myself doing a solo episode or I have a guest on. We're here to indirectly speak to you in regards to whatever challenges you may be having, whatever you may be going through, whatever difficult situations you're going through. We're here to indirectly tell you you're not going through it alone. There are people who have been there, they've done that, and they've built up organizations. So you understand that you are not alone whenever it is you're going through a difficult time. So today I have Ms. Joan Posivy, right?
You got it perfect.
And the reason, so the reason I'm super pumped to have her on is because I remember this term, your side hustle. I remember this term kind of being something that got said, and especially, I come from the fitness and the athletics world, and there's tons of trainers who, all right, this is the side hustle, and there's a lot of people doing certain things, and you've been actually able to build up a framework and an organization and a business that's called the Side Hustle Hero. And I was listening to you previously. You have principles, you have a lot of different things that you've been able to detail it and build it out for people. So, with all that, let's kind of start here. Let's kind of just talk a little bit about your background, where
Okay.
you came from, how you grew up and stuff like that. Because one thing I do know is you don't wake up one morning and say, okay, I'm going to start a business name and become the Side Hustle Hero. So let's got to go back a little bit and go from there.
How far would you like to go back?
Yeah, like I was telling, listen, we don't have time limits here, so that's on you.
Okay. Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me on your show, Aswin. Let's see, how far back should we go? Okay, so my first career was in banking. Please don't hold that against me.
Thank you.
When banking, yes, when I set that goal, I thought, oh my gosh, if I ever became a bank manager, my life would be made. Like, what more could I possibly want?
Hmm.
Turns out a lot, but it was the path that got me there that really set the framework for the rest of my life. There was a speaker I heard when I was, I'm going to say 18, 19 years old,
Hmm.
and I was invited to this evening seminar. Friends of mine told me it was on marketing,
Yeah.
which it turns out it wasn't. He was talking about your mind and your potential, and it's the first time I'd ever heard anything like that. And basically, his message was, you can create anything that you want with your life, regardless of what you think your limitations are or what you feel. Negative events happened in the past. He says, that's all in the past. What do you want to do in the future? You can literally design your life, every aspect of it.
Hmm.
I wanted to believe him, was a little skeptical, but took what ended up to being a deep dive, really a lifelong dive into it. But what happened, Aswin, was I was starting to apply these things, and through applying the principles and understanding the connection between the way we think and the
Hmm.
results that that creates in our lives, and if we
Yeah.
want to change something externally,
Yeah.
it's an inside job. And so, applying the principles, I bought my first house when I was 19. I became that branch manager at age 22. Worked
Right.
at that for a few years and thought, you know what, this ain't it.
Hmm.
And started down that entrepreneurial path instead.
So what was the event like? Who was it? Like, give us some details about what the event was all about.
Oh, sure. Well, it started out being an evening seminar. Friends of mine told me it was going to be on predominantly business matters,
Right.
marketing. But it was about a 3 hour seminar in the evening. There's about 300 people there. I sat about 3 rows back, 2 seats over, and for a couple of hours
I
just
mean,
sat
and
mesmerized.
not to cut you off, but and this happens on the show. Whenever there's a pausable moment that I don't want to let them brush over. She remembers the exact time, the exact place she was sitting, all that. When you are putting on events and when you're serving people, you have got to change their lives. You have to have it in your mind that it could be somebody walking in that arena, walking in that seminar, and their life is going to change forever. And that's an important aspect to, because we're going to dive into side hustles and building your business in a minute. But it's
Sure.
important that when it comes to how you serve people and with the experience you create, that is going to last with them for a very, very long time. So I had to make sure I made that point. It's good to see that you knew the exact the levels back, that time. That's awesome.
It was the Hilton Hotel, Dixon Road in Toronto, Canada.
You. Oh man. She has no notes, guys. If you're listening to this,
No,
she has
yeah, no.
absolutely no notes. She's not walking around with the notes, and she knows exactly what it was.
So ended up studying all I could on the topic, and it was Bob Proctor that was doing the seminar at the time.
Bob Proctor, okay.
Yeah, yeah. And he and I eventually ended up working together.
So let's go back a little bit further, because
Sure.
one of the things that actually I just had a previous guest on, we were talking about this, is when it comes to school, the element of entrepreneurship isn't being taught. And you're talking about 19 years old, and you're
Yep,
immediately in the kind of the 9 to 5, traditional 9 to 5 world.
for sure.
How
Yep,
what was, looking back on it now, what was
yeah.
school like for you, and what ultimately led you? Like, were you going to school and then working full time? How was it once it became, all right, 18, I got to figure out a way to do something. School's no longer there. Walk us
Yeah.
through that kind of where you were in that mindset.
I always wanted a few bucks in my pocket because to me that felt like independence. If I had a couple of bucks, it was like mine to spend how I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my parents had a different attitude about that, but to me, it spelt freedom. And so, I had my first paper route when I was 10 years old. I was working pretty consistently part time from age 13.
Yeah,
And by the age of 18, I got a job part time working at the bank.
that bank,
And
right?
that's really where it all started. And what I found was that I connected with that so much.
Yeah,
And I was learning through that. I was learning way more doing that and interacting with customers and other people and just
yeah.
in that industry than I did with school. So
Mm-hmm.
after high school, it was like, I'm out of here. I don't have the patience to go to university or college.
Oh my God. Listen, it's so crazy because I mean, just to give you listeners some perspective, this is actually the first time that we're actually officially virtually or meeting. And it's so crazy how similar the story is. I was
Really?
15 years old when I had my first job, and it's because I tore my ACL. And when I was going through that, I was seeing entrepreneur trainers. I was seeing like people who are selling the gym memberships, the people that are managing it, folks even cleaning up and making sure the towels were on point. And I was getting so much out of just simply meeting a member saying,
Mm,
"Hey, how was your workout? What'd you work on today? Did you hit your goal? How'd it
yeah.
go? Come back tomorrow." All of these things I didn't realize as they're coming into the gym. This is actually saving their lives. This is actually doing something productive as opposed to doing something that they could have been doing that wasn't going to be conducive to their development. And at
Yes.
19, getting those lessons is truly, truly a blessing. And I have to ask you now, like once, because what happened was I was it felt like you were ahead of the curve as a 19-year-old in some ways.
Mhm.
And then
Yep.
you just mentioned once you decided entrepreneurship is something you're going to do. Now, this is when you realize it's not as easy. You realize there's a lot of trials and tribulations, a lot of highs and lows. So,
A lot
walk
of
us through
fear.
a lot of fear. Walk us through a little bit about how it was for you when you're like, all right, cool. I think I got it, but whoop, it's not going to be as simple as not that check every 2 weeks. They're going to be coming in the way it
Yeah.
used to be. So,
And that's the beauty of side hustles.
mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, yeah.
those started a little bit like I had a well, no, this would have been in my early 20s, a Christmas tree lot, which in
A lot. Oh, nice.
Christmas tree lot, yeah, where you order in. But I mean that's pretty scary. So you order the Christmas trees in October, they're
Yeah.
delivered. Or excuse me, they're you put in the order in October because
Mhm.
they're cut and then they have to be shipped. So
Yes.
you've got like 10 or well, back then, I don't know what the numbers are now, but I
Mhm.
remember like having to write a check for like 15 grand for these trees
Right.
back in October and they get delivered in early December. Now, how many people do you think buy Christmas trees in early December?
Very,
Zero.
very
So
few.
now you're sitting there in this Christmas tree lot, freezing your butt off, and you're
Hmm.
looking at all this inventory that you know is going to be worthless December
Wow.
26th, right?
Wow. That's
But
crazy.
then,
So I wrote an article about that.
really,
Yeah, it was an article but I was kind of emphasizing, I was talking about good to great, and I was talking about businesses like the people that cut down the Christmas trees, and that the fact that their contracts have to be paid for well in advance. So the person who
mhm,
has to pay that $15,000 to, they get their money whether
yep.
those trees sell or not. They gonna keep their money, and to develop that skill. That is crazy that you were one of the people that actually paid for it. And,
Yeah.
you know,
I never
like
thought of it that way. That's awesome. So if you're going to be in that chain somewhere, right?
Mhm.
Be the one selling it because then you don't have to pay. It's like
Right.
I've been involved in a family of home builders and construction for a lot of my life. And if you're building a house, the last tradesperson you want to be is the kitchen guy
Mhm.
because they that goes in last, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that goes a
So
lot. That goes a lot. I
the
mean,
framer, yeah.
all right. That's what I'm saying. And it was Jim Collins, Good to Great, had me thinking like that because he talked about, hey, you want to build a great business, the contract's got to be set, everything is moving. And hey, if those trees sell, they sell. If they don't, they don't. I got my contract already set and we're good to go. So
Yeah.
what'd you do with the trees that didn't sell?
Well, that's just it. So the flip side of that is the grower has a downside. I'm not sure about the Christmas trees. I suppose you could have a forest fire or something,
Mhm.
or a major drought. But the key in the Christmas tree business is location, and we had a fantastic location. It was in a higher end neighborhood that we traveled to, where they spent a lot of money at this garden center, and then we took part of the parking lot for the Christmas tree lot. And
Right.
then as you get closer, you start doing deals and it's all cash and this is a
Hmm.
great business. But then
Yeah.
I moved across the country from basically Toronto, which is considered Eastern Canada, to the West, where the people selling trees retail were selling less that I could even buy them wholesale, you
Hmm.
know. So that
All
just
right.
the market wasn't it. So that
Yeah,
wasn't it.
that's kind of where I was. That's what made me think is just that element of being able to sell certain things wholesale and then
Yeah.
teaching the young people that because like we had
Yeah.
mentioned, it's not being taught in school. You have to go and learn this. And what you
Yes.
talked about in terms of finding the right location, all of this, folks, is stuff that you got to learn on the fly. You got to pick
Hmm.
up information as you go. You got to go and get your hands dirty and figure certain things out. So, after that, do when well, let's first of all, let's do this. Let's just kind of give a your definition of what a side hustle actually is. I think if we start there, we'll be able to kind of go into your next phase and how you're able to turn all of this into an actual business.
To be a side hustle is something that someone does above and beyond their 9 to 5, their
Mm-hmm.
full-time work. That's the simple definition. And then an extension of that is the reason that they're going into it. Sometimes they do want to become an entrepreneur and they want to test out an idea. So this
Right.
is a way to figure out, geez, is this really going to work? And if I can get it going, is it actually what I want to do? For
Right.
some people, it's additional income simply for other things that they want to do, whether it's that dream trip or putting themselves through school or something specific like that.
Right.
And so I knew that I wanted to leave banking, but didn't know what I wanted to get into.
Mm-hmm.
And around that time of uncertainty and questioning, I ended up having the opportunity to move out west into the mountains.
Mm-hmm.
However, the economy was really bad at the time, and there was a job opening for somebody in the banking industry in loans and mortgages. And I'm like, oh man, I don't really want to do this, but it's walking into a good paycheck where meanwhile I can figure out the town and see what's going on. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what I did and found a business that was going out of business. It was a delicatessen of all things,
Mm-hmm.
and ended up buying it
Hmm.
and worked it as a side hustle for about a year until I could quit the bank.
Now, when you're in this, you said you had worked in the mortgage business, right?
That was
So,
part of the banking thing.
right,
Yeah.
that's part of the banking. How would you describe that experience? And I asked that because I have a lot of sales stories, just like you, a lot of stories in terms of people coming in because I'm fitness and athletics and stuff like that. And I had a previous, he was my manager at LA Fitness, he's a great seller, but he left the mortgage business and we would talk a lot about how maybe certain things are commercial, like if you wanted to buy out this LA Fitness and a lot of the business lessons that you just pick up in terms of dealing with clients and trying to get them the best deal and stuff like that. So
Yes.
you say that experience led you into the business that you're running now. If so, how were the two like that experience helping you to build what you have now?
It, what I find is that every job that we've had,
Mm-hmm.
there's some value in there that
Preach
you're
it. Come
gaining,
on, come on, come on, Virtue.
right?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And that's another thing with a lot of people who complain so much about their jobs. I
Hmm.
think it's so powerful what you just said. So many people out there, you complain about the job that you have, and you're not seeing the fact that first of all, you're getting a check every 2 weeks, and you have opportunity to make something of it because there's something you're doing that's productive. You could be on the corner not doing anything, but
Yep.
there's something you could be taken away from it.
Yep. And I'm going to add two pieces to that. One
Yes, ma'am.
is if we are complaining and bitching and looking at the negative side of something, we're not open to the possibilities that could be right there. We're going to be missing them because we're
Right.
focused in something that we say that we don't want, which by
Mhm.
its very nature, you're giving energy to it. And it's a pretty good chance you'll continue to create more of the same in the future.
Mhm.
Now, somebody from the outside looking in, you might think it's these external forces, but you need to take a look in the mirror. If there's a
Yes.
lot of crap happening in your life, like where is my thinking? Where am I focusing?
Right.
People don't give themselves enough credit for understanding how powerful their thought really is.
Mhm.
Secondly, especially when I'm working with younger people, 19 to 30-year-olds, I love working with a younger demographic,
Mhm.
as I'll often say, I mean, chances are, let's face it, their first few jobs aren't going to be their dream jobs. So I said, I don't care what it is you're working. If you're flipping burger somewhere,
Mhm.
whatever it is, I was going to say cleaning up trash. That's a fantastic side hustle,
Mhm.
but that's a different
Uh,
story. But
listen,
regardless of what
I've
it
done
is that
that.
you're
I've done
doing,
that as well. I used to take out the trash at the gym. I've done that as
yeah,
well.
do
Don't
your
knock it.
very best
Mhm.
because you never know who's watching.
Mhm.
So one of my mentors, he was the president of a trust company where I was the bank manager. He said, always be on the lookout for great employees, even if you don't have to hire someone now.
Mhm.
When the opportunity do come up higher, you know who you can go and steal.
Yes.
So if I'm walking into, I don't know, a Walgreens and I see somebody there that clearly doesn't want to be there, I'm not going to give them a second look. But
Mhm.
somebody two aisles over, they're just, hey, how you doing? What? I'm like, oh my God, I want to steal her,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So do your best. You
Yeah.
never know who's watching.
There's so many stories and thoughts I have about that. I'll just share one with you because there was a previous franchise gym I worked at called Nine Round, and one of the owners. Well, first she started out as a member. She's actually been on when the show first started. She was on the show, and then shout out to Stephanie if you're listening. But she was a member for a while and bought the franchise, but didn't tell anybody. She didn't tell. She didn't tell the currently. Like she didn't tell the current staff. She didn't tell the trainers. None of that stuff. And she would just be there working out evaluating people, them
Oh,
not
wow.
realizing that they actually are the boss. So that I was like, and she
I love that.
and I love that. So for you folks out there who just are treating your 9 to 5 or treating your job as if it's not something productive, you just simply never know. I'm not telling you something that's going to be easy. I get it. I've been there. Mentally, when I used to be taking out that trash, I would have President Obama's DNC speech in my ear, getting me through it. But you have to do what you have to do to make sure you're presenting yourself in a certain way because you just don't know who's going to walk through those doors. So, with all that, you buy the business, and what's like the next phase of after you were able to invest in the business when it comes to the like once the mortgage thing was working out and then you bought into the business, what was the next phase?
Essentially to grow it because it was in a position where it was going to be closing its doors. It was going out of business.
Mm-hmm.
The person that was running it at the time, he had started it on behalf of his father, who was working for a utility. And the plan was that when the father passed, excuse me, when the father retired from the utility, he was going to be running this business full time. And the son was really setting it up for it. Well, the father indeed retired, but shortly thereafter, he passed away.
Oh, no.
So now the son's sitting with this business, which he clearly doesn't want, and
Right.
it's going downhill. And so essentially, I bought the equipment really,
Yeah.
and the physical space for us to operate out of.
Mhm.
And it was at a time when the economy was really bad, and we had about five, six competitors at the time, three within a very close facility.
Mhm.
And in the span of a couple of years, those independents, the three around us, they closed while ours flourished.
Mhm.
And I'm telling you this not to impress, but impress upon your listeners and viewers that when we focus on what's wrong and what doesn't work, we're not going to find a solution. And
Mm.
so we knew this business was going out of business, so we had to turn it around. So,
Mhm.
number one, you build an image in your mind of what you want the business to be like. And
Mhm.
just like I remember where I was at the Hilton Hotel on Dixon Road,
Possibly, yeah.
I remember the vision that I created that this deli was going to be hopping. I mean, I could hear the people talking,
Mhm.
the place packed, the cash register ringing. And so then it's like, okay, what's the first step? And so you see something like, oh, there's a food trade show happening. Let's go check it out. Oh, frozen yogurt machine. Never heard of those before. What's that like? Oh, let's bring that back to the community. And I
Right.
know what was happening across the street in the other delis. They were whining and complaining on how bad the economy was and
Yeah.
how unemployment was high. And those things were all factual, they're
Yeah.
true. But
Yeah.
if I focus on those things, it's not helping me but build my business. So you
Uh,
want to connect with people that are going in the direction that you want to go.
mhm.
Because honestly, the fact that ours did well had nothing to do with any
Mhm.
wow, marketing genius or anything like that. It
You
was
didn't
just
really have a
like,
background in
okay,
that.
what's the next
You're a
step?
former banker. Like you have
Exactly. I like to eat. That was the
right, you like to eat right.
qualifications. Yeah. And just as a side note to that, so I looked at the sort of the deal to purchase this place, and I
Mhm.
talked to the commercial loans officer at the bank I was working with at the time. Because remember, I stayed with the banking for a year,
Yeah.
and I was telling him, I was thinking to buy it, and I was all excited. And he proceeded to tell me all the reasons why it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
That the town didn't need a new food place. What do you know about the food
Mhm.
industry? And then fast forward a bunch of years. Well, actually, no, because he wasn't around when I eventually sold it.
Mhm.
Fast forward a year when I get to quit because we've built up the business. And I
Exactly. So
swear to
you're
God, he said, oh, you're so lucky to be able to leave this place and go into your own business.
yes. I
Like,
mean that
oh
must have been
man.
rewarding for you. That must
Yeah,
have been
it's all
awesome
luck.
for you.
It
Yeah.
I didn't say anything. I was just like, there's no point. But,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
get with people who are doing or pursuing what you want to do. And
Yeah.
I'm sure on your show, you've talked about the value of mentors, coaches, people that
Mhm.
have come before you that can show you the way. Because when you're building up something new,
Mhm.
you don't know what you don't know, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
And so when I got involved in the self storage industry, see, that was another thing. Because of the research that I'd done, I came across this industry and I thought, man, this is a perfect fit for me for
Mhm.
a number of reasons. But I didn't know anything about the industry at all. And that's a key with goal setting is don't base goals on your present circumstances because your present circumstances are just a reflection of your thinking and your action and your choices up until this moment. If you want to create something new, you acknowledge it. You say yes, this is the case, but then set it aside mentally and say, okay, what is it that I really want to do? And the self storage industry was it.
Yeah.
And so again, you go back to that building that image. What's the first thing I need to do? And sometimes you end up seeing people in places that you think are not connected,
Mhm.
but that's exactly where you needed to be. And in which was the case for me. I happened to be at this party, and it was a like a friend of a friend of a friend. He said, "Oh,
Right.
hey, there's this guy Gordon. He's new to town. Blah blah blah." We just started talking. Turned
Mhm.
out he had a whole portfolio of self storage facilities, and I'm
Wow.
like, and during the conversation, I mean, he became a mentor. And at one point, when I found one that I wanted to buy, he said to here, call up one of my managers, go visit them, ask them anything that you want. Again, that mentorship was invaluable. He didn't do anything for me,
Mhm.
right? Like
Right.
he didn't loan me money. He didn't
Right.
do,
Right.
but the knowledge and his
Conversation.
confidence.
Mhm.
Because I remember bringing him the deal, and he's like, "Oh yeah, it's a no brainer." I'm like, "Really?
Yeah.
Okay."
And to add to that a little bit too, because you may be listening in and you may not feel like you know the right people personally. It may feel like a daunting task to actually physically meet these people. However, there are resources that'll allow you to still get the same information. Because as you were talking, I'm thinking about Howard Schultz and I'm thinking about the way he found Starbucks. I'm thinking about Magic Johnson. And I read both their books, and what both of them connected on was the fact that Starbucks isn't just selling coffee; they're selling
Right.
environment. And just like again, you're at this deli. It's more of an environment. Let's focus on the things we can do. Let's not
Hmm.
be that person that's having a negative outlook on whatever the business is. And regardless of the industry, regardless of what you're selling, your services and how you deliver these services is going to be everything. All right. The people you put in place. And I gotta tell this story because there's a 7-Eleven I go to in the mornings to get my car. I take my runs every morning. There's 7-Eleven I go to. And for some reason, I stopped going to this specific one, but because I was close, I just said, you know what, I'll go to this one yet this morning. I walk
Okay.
in there, the guy's smoking, he's complaining, he's like just so upset at the fact that, I mean, just bitches at me the entire time. And I haven't had my coffee yet, Joe. And so
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah, that's right. And you're going in there to give this guy money.
All right, yeah, because
So,
well, oh yeah, that's why, because I needed gas. That's why I went to that, because I knew they were open. I
okay.
needed gas, so I'm like, all right, I'll just. But I'm not. If I can avoid it, I don't mind. Driving another 2 miles to find somewhere else because I won't have to hear him bitch and complain. And there was another one, just in contrast, so you guys know, is I went into another 7-Eleven. This is when I think I was in Miami, and I don't normally go to this one. But the girl was friendly. She's like, "Good morning. How's your day? What kind of cream do you like? All that stuff." And then she tells me, look, you get 7 seconds. You get 7 seconds with the customer. That's it. So you got to make your impression.
Wow.
I know, you see that? I had that same, like, this is a girl working at a 7-Eleven that has the mindset of, I'm running a Fortune 500 company. And that's the way all of us need to be thinking. So
And that would have been a name. It's like, can I get your name there? Just like, I know who I'm going to come and steal, right? Yeah.
yeah,
As
that's
opposed to the person that might be 2 cash registers over going, oh, damn, I hate this place,
hate
you know?
it. Right.
Yeah.
And that mentality again, I get that you're in this, but with books, with podcasts, with all
Yeah.
the things that you could be doing to put in your mind and all the stories out there, you really have no excuse. This is not the world in which you have to stay so focused in your current circumstance. There's ways of mentally pulling yourself out of that shit and making it so you can, approach your job every single day as if you were the CEO. And that is a very valuable thing to have in your mind.
And as you're doing
Yeah,
that,
go
as you're spending maybe more time
ahead.
reading or on YouTube and starting to pursue what you feel is a better life for you,
Mhm.
that's going to take you some time that you've normally been spending whatever it else you were doing. So
Yes,
maybe that was hanging out with some of your friends who maybe don't have the same vision that you do.
right.
And you, depending on how supportive well, if they're supportive, great. But if they're not, and they try to pull you back to where they are and criticize you, uh, at some point, some of those relationships might fall away. But the
Mhm.
good news is, as you're stepping into this different life and lifestyle, you'll connect with people who are more in tune with where you're going.
Right. So let's get into how you serve people currently. I see you have the podcast, the Side Hustle Hero, and you also have develop clients. What's your, I guess, your strategy, or an ideal client for you to find, just in case anybody's listening?
Awesome. Well, forever, well, I shouldn't say forever. After I left banking and got into entrepreneurship,
Mm-hmm.
I loved that track, but I also loved the personal development space because that's what really launched it all
Yeah, you
for
had that
me.
19 years old, right?
Yeah.
Go there.
So my book is, yeah. So my book is called The Way Success Works: How
Mm-hmm.
to Decide, Believe, and Begin to Live Your Best Life. And so I've got 30, 40 years of doing seminars and trainings and writing, etc. Having said that, though, I never wanted to be a speaker who just talked about stuff and talked about theory. And
Yeah.
so I always had businesses running alongside it, really as sandboxes, testing grounds. And I love business. So
Mm-hmm.
with the podcast, to me, it kind of brings those both worlds together
Yeah.
because I get to interview amazing people in business that are creating their side hustles. And obviously, there's a personal development component in there
Mm-hmm.
because of what's needed. Because
Right.
oftentimes, you're alone, you're doing it. You may have a team, uh, but ultimately, it's your decision
Your
making,
vision.
it's
Yeah.
your perseverance. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's a strong personal development piece that I integrate to the best of my ability each episode because there is no shortage of side hustle ideas out there. If you and I sat down there and just Googled, the top 10 or what should I start in 2024, you're going to get a whole whack of results.
Yeah.
It's the execution, it's the
Yeah.
taking action. So that's the piece that I really like to focus on.
Right. And it's another point that needs to be made. You're never too young to start. Never too young.
No,
My niece was what, 10 years old, and she started selling candles. And I mean, I remember going back. I'm from Maryland, and that's where they live. But it
yeah.
was one Christmas, and she absolutely made a killing. Damn,
Really?
Cash App and just moving. I'm looking at my niece. I'm
Uh,
like, it's a really proud uncle moment, man. The website, candle boss, all that, and I'm like, now my sister, her mother's a lot like you. She got her first job at, I believe it was 14 years old, and
yeah.
has not been without a job since, just working every single, I mean, through school, everything. So, it's never, and this is a message not only for the young people, but you parents as well. The school system's not going to do it. This is going to be
Right.
a you for you guys to be really teach and develop the financial literacy that needs to be taught in the home, because it's kind of against what the school system wants. The school system wants that employee mindset, get a secure job. And if you want to actually do more for your generation and more for your family, it's going to be on you to develop that in the household that you're kind of building. It's financial literacy, what we do with our money, how we invest, all that kind of stuff. So, I
Yeah.
do want to be very respectful of your time. I know we could probably talk for hours. So can you just kind of tell people what's next, what you see coming down the pipeline, what do you envision in the next couple of years for your business and all that stuff? And I know that that's gonna be a challenging question for an entrepreneur, because it's like, but you definitely have to have some sort of vision.
Well, I often tell people in their side hustles, like, treat it like a real business. This isn't just like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, something you're doing as an afterthought. It's a real thing that can grow into something incredibly wonderful for you on so many fronts. So treat it like a business. So I take a look at what's happening in my business quarterly, et cetera. And just last week, I came back from my first ever corporate retreat. Because what for Side Hustle Hero,
There you
because what
go. Nice.
thank you.
I
I
can see
just
that.
posted
Yeah.
an Instagram reel on it today.
Okay.
And I
Well, we'll
had
exchange social media after this. Yes. Yes. There we go. I can see that.
and the first shot is of a flip chart with three first things to do upon arrival at the treat. Number one was blow up the stand-up paddleboard. Because, I mean, you got to have fun, right?
Yes. Yes.
With it. But what was happening, and this is so common for side hustle people, and I put myself in this boat, is
Right.
you're growing this thing. There's so much learning. I mean, when I started this, I had no idea even how to do a podcast, what microphone do you buy? I mean, there's so many things to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And so as you're growing whatever side hustle it is, you're so wrapped up in working on it,
Mm-hmm.
the day-to-day stuff, in my case, doing an episode every week,
Mm-hmm.
that and promoting it and everything that goes with it and
Yeah.
finding guests. Mind you, after you get involved in something, certain aspects of it come easier. So I get most people reaching out to me now, but still there's a lot of moving parts and
Mm-hmm.
pieces. And I realized that I wasn't spending any time on the big picture stuff, on the vision. Where is this thing going? And week after week was going by, and I was still just like keeping up. So I thought, you know what? I'm booking this retreat. I'm going away for 3 days, and
Mm-hmm.
that's all I'm going to focus on is, all right, what do I want this to look like 5 years from now? How
Oh,
are we
okay.
going to get there? All that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So I called it my first corporate retreat, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're looking
Yeah.
at the attendees, and
Yeah.
I highly recommend that for any side hustle if you feel that you are just,
Uh-huh.
you're just so bogged down in the day-to-day stuff.
Yeah.
And so you realize that, okay, what kind of team do I have to hire out? What are they going to be doing? Like all those parts and pieces. And I had to physically get away from my space
Yeah.
and to be able to start planning all that.
Yeah,
So
that's right up your alley. That works though. Sometimes when it comes to what's next, when you have done so many things, you got to remove yourself from the day to day just to
yeah,
get that clear perspective. So, if anyone wants to reach out, what's the best way to get in touch with you and all that stuff?
pretty much everything lives at sidehustlehero.com.
Side hustle, and that will be so that will be included in the show notes as well. Sidehustlehero.com. And so the final thing I do, Joan, to close out all the shows is I want you to use your imagination a little bit. You are 19 years old. You've hit the breakthrough moment with Bob Proctor, but you have to kind of go back to this 9 to 5. It's miserable. You're around people that are complaining. They're just taking the shortcuts, the whole nine. But you have this energy, and it's not fitting. So something's not there. So pretend that 19-year-old girl has come into the Zoom room. Give her some words of encouragement, and we will officially close.
Wow. I'd say, you know what, Joan? Number one, lighten up. Don't take things too seriously. And you
Okay.
need to take way more risk, girl. You're way too conservative.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help. You don't have to know everything. There are, especially as a 22-year-old bank manager, I felt like I needed to know everything.
Mhm.
And I learned a lot from watching people around me, but I could have learned so much more if I said, hey, can I grab a coffee with you or beer or whatever the case may be and pick your brain? And I find most people are really willing to help. So ask for help, big, big dreams, and take action.
That's it. And honestly, you were talking to my 19-year-old self as well. You weren't just talking to Joe. You were actually talking to Aswan as well at 19, because I was had a very similar challenges as well. So all that being said, fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.